So let me drop back a little bit and talk to you a little bit about when I was a kid. You know, I'm the guy who played right field. Anybody know what that means? I wasn't much of an athlete. In fact, I'm being kind. I was an awful athlete. This is a picture I got off the internet. What's happening in the game? Game on, right? The guy's pitching. What's the right fielder doing? Picking his nose. He's oblivious. You know, in high school, I actually was on the cross-country team, and I know there's a couple people from Chicago. That's Highland Park, Illinois, and I'll show you which one I am. I quit after 3 weeks. Cross-country wasn't for me. I wasn't much of a runner. I came back my sophomore year, and the coach greeted me with, "Wien, you're a quitter and a loser." And he wouldn't even give me a uniform or a locker. 4 weeks later, after I didn't miss a practice, he gave me a locker, a uniform, and I stayed on, and I actually made the 7th man on the varsity team my senior year. It was a 5-man team. I was the 7th guy. You know, if somebody died on the bus going to the meet, I guess I would have counted. You know, I learned something important about this whole thing about specific edge. And that is, to really be a good athlete as a young person, you have to have size, you have to be big, you have to have speed, and you have to have eye-hand coordination. I got to tell you, I had none of the above. But I did find something as I aged that I was pretty good at. You know, I was a pretty good runner, I was a pretty good swimmer, and I was a pretty good biker. And I wasn't great at any one of those, but when you combine all three, and if there happens to be a sport that overlaps, I was doing pretty good. Okay, Kona, it's the Super Bowl, it's the World Series, it's the Tour de France. This is the big deal in the triathlon world. You have to qualify, and I never forgot for a second, it was that kid from right field that was going to the World Championships. So it's a 2.4-mile swim in Kona Bay. It's a 112-mile bike across volcanoes, you know, a field of lava. Maybe some of you have seen it on NBC. Look carefully, you see the smoke coming off of my back. And then it's a full marathon. And you know, after 20 miles, I felt my whole system starting to shut down. I was physically gone. I was mentally wasted. I was emotionally drained. You know what that means? It was, what was I thinking? And somehow for that last 6 miles, I pushed through, and I came across that finish line in 11 hours, 11 minutes, and 23 seconds with my wife screaming at the top of her lungs, "You're second!" For my age. A guy from Switzerland beat me. That was a guy from Chile who came in third. What an exciting time. You know, developing endurance, look at this chart. It's not just physical, and don't think it's just physical. The physical is the obvious. Muscle development, I had to learn, for you bike riders, to pedal up and pedal down. I also had to build my aerobic capacity. That's the obvious. But how about the intellectual side? I had to worry about what I was eating. I had to make sure that on the bike I didn't burn myself out. And I had to have a very serious training regimen for about a year training for this. There's the emotional side. And on the emotional side, you've got, I was chasing a dream. You have to learn to deal with setbacks. We all deal with those. And you have to overcome fears. In an ocean swim, I have to admit, I'm deathly allergic to sharks. And finally, there's the spiritual component. It's humbling to know that in a typical Ironman, there's 2,400 competitors, there's 4,000 volunteers, and also just the appreciation of the kind of health I'm in. I'll share with you my age at the end, and knowing that you're not alone. Now think of these 4 things. Aren't these 4 things lessons for an Ironman, but aren't they lessons for all of you, for your success? Think about it. Let's talk about each one. On the physical side, are you worried about your overall health, your fitness, your diet? Are you getting enough sleep, especially when you're trying to hold down a job and take your classes? On the intellectual side, are you learning? Yes. Are you focused on your job, and are you focused on your career? All too often, that's the easy part. How about on the emotional side? Are you still staying connected with your family and your friends and building relationships? And on the spiritual side, are you staying in touch with the community? Are you active? For some of you are involved in your church or synagogue. And do you have empathy for others? And I would suggest to you that your success, a good part of your success, and maintaining that endurance has got to be, you've got to keep yourself in balance. physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. Fair enough? And one more point about endurance. It's not about how you handle your wins. That's easy. It's about how you deal with setbacks and disappointments. And we've all had plenty. But there's an important message here, and that is, it's not how great you are. It's how great you try to be. It's not how great you are. It's how great you try to be. And that's so important. Okay, I've talked a lot about my setbacks. I talked about fantastics, right field, the locker room. You know, people handle setbacks. Its attitude is everything. What do we see here? Right, a glass half full, okay? But if you're ordinary, you're focusing on the problems. If you're extraordinary, you're focusing on the solutions. Are you searching for excuses when something goes wrong? Or are you searching for improvement? Are you stuck in the past, or are you looking toward the future? Is it a failure, or as Bill Korn said, it was a learning experience? Are you finding the negatives, or are you looking at the positives? Are you blaming others for what happened, or are you accepting responsibility? And boy, we've seen that in the press too often. Are you discouraged? Are you motivated to improve? Are you covering up the weaknesses? I got to get better at swimming. Or are you addressing those weaknesses? I want to conclude by talking about Hines Ward. Some of you might know Hines was a UGA, University of Georgia star football player. This is a picture of him with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a two-time Super Bowl ring winner, okay? You know what he did next? He retired last year. He's now working for the NBC and the NFL. He won Dancing with the Stars. How does that happen? And I'll tell you something even crazier. He's now training for the World Championships of the Ironman because NBC gave him a celebrity slot. You want to see what that football player looks like in North Georgia mountains? And now you want to see something really crazy? There's a 37-year-old guy right now, and guess who his training buddy is? Yeah, that's me, and now I'll share with you my age. His 37-year-old training buddy is 61 years old. That's how I can win. I compete with these old guys. But I want to go back to the Dancing with the Stars because isn't that a great picture? How does a football player become a star dancer? And it's because discipline, endurance, concentration. He went to Hollywood 11 weeks before that show and trained 8 hours a day. Discipline, concentration, endurance. It's all the same stuff. Don't ever forget one thing. Sustained effort wins. Thank you. Thank you.